good morning. So
Good morning.
welcome to another episode of Venkatology. So today we have Mr. Achal Rangaswamy. I know him since my earlier sales career in Gujarat. So Achal Rangaswamy, the coach who has spent close to 35 years in sales. He has been speaker at various programs, including IIM. He is also an author of few books. He's a life coach, TEDx speaker, sales specialist. He calls himself a Lithuanian because he has studied over there. He has a 250,000 kilometer Enfield bullet biker. He has a passion for riding bullet, and that is how his sales career began. He has told me a lot of time. The self-confessed cricket anthropologist, a great Mohammad Rafi fan. One thing which I want to start is I have never seen a passionate salesman in my life who is very, very particular about time management, and he manages his work to the T. Fortunately, during the lockdown time, I had the privilege of getting coached by him for around 5 months, where he took me through the finer points of how to coach the younger generation. So today I have the privilege of welcoming him and also the privilege of speaking to him to take us through his journey, which can be helpful for the next generation. So thank you very much, sir, for coming. It's now all over to you. You can start.
Thank you, Venkatesh, for the invitation. And thanks for this very warm introduction. A lot of it sounds like fiction to me. Thank you very much, Venkatesh, for this invite and for the opportunity to have another chat. So this time, I guess you're going to broadcast this chat. So I always have this feeling, I'm almost confident that most youngsters, when they are on the verge, on the threshold of their career, know fairly well what they don't want to do in life, but don't have a very clear idea of what they want to do. In the introduction, you said that this is a guy who has been riding a bike and that's how he began his career. In fact, I probably took up a career in sales, not because I wanted to be in sales. Like most other people, I used to look down upon the profession. But I wanted to ride a bullet. And as it happens, it's not so easy to get a bullet out of your dad. And you realize a mistake when your dad tells you he can't afford a bike that costs 10,029 rupees. That was the price in 1979. You realize that you should have gone to your mother and not to your father to ask for help. But then in my case, it turned out to be worse because the typical middle class Tambram mother said, "Beta, tu gir jayega, pair toot jayega," and she said that in Hindi because we all grew up in Delhi. So I realized that you will have to find some other means. Destiny intervened, and like they say, if you really wish for something, it happens. But you got to do something. You just can't sit and wish. But as it turned out, two very interesting things happened, Venkatesh. One was that there was an advertisement, a newspaper advertisement by a company that never advertised. And it was a beautifully written job advertisement where the prominent message was people who join us as trainee sales representatives will get a bullet. I went to the five-star hotel in New Delhi where the walk-in interviews were taking place. And there, the Presto sign board also said something very interesting. The message that I could gather was the first half said, earn more than our managing director. And the second half said, get a bullet free. To be honest, the first half didn't fascinate me. I guess, people of our school, people of our generation, couldn't have been bothered about because one didn't know what a managing director earned. Today, every youngster probably tries to figure that out. So I was quite content with having the bike. And the second thing that happened, this again where destiny, comes to play. After joining the organization, after having my initial training in Ahmedabad, and then being posted in Rajasthan after a month, can you believe it? I got the motorcycle on the 3rd of July, 1979, because I joined end May. Through June, my training took place, and I reported at the Jaipur branch in the first week of July. And on the 3rd of July, as I reached the office, there was this bullet waiting for me. And the bike registration number, Venkatesh, was RSP 3779. 3rd July 1979. So I sensed that something is going to happen. And it's the beginning of not necessarily a successful career, but the beginning of a very eventful life. And 2.5 lakh kilometers later, I realized that it wasn't about sales at all. It wasn't about selling at all. It was about enjoying the journey, enjoying riding a bike. To a lot of people, the dream is to get a job that brings a bike along. I guess to me, the dream was to get a bike that brought a job along. So, destiny has often been walking alongside, making things happen for me. Otherwise, studying in an elite college in Delhi University, which has a reputation for churning out hundreds of bureaucrats, police officers, career diplomats, and corporate honchos. I don't know how many people would have begun their career at the lowest rung of the corporate hierarchy. The silver lining was it was a multinational, and the other good thing was that it was supposed to be one of the best sales schools in India. It's an organization where they taught you how to sell, and they methodically made you practice those lessons in the marketplace. So that's how my career started out. And then after that, it was a case of finding new avenues, finding new roads, new territories, new cities, new states, new cuisine, new languages, new cultures, and traveling from one corner of the country to the other, living out of so many different cities, and picking up many, many lessons on the way. But I guess the essence of the whole thing, and this is what I share with youngsters, even when I'm not talking about sales, even when I'm talking about careers and things like that, I always tell people that we remember all those lessons that we learned at school in our early days, in the nursery and KG part of our school. We don't remember the chemical formulae, the physics sums, or the math equations, or geometry or trigonometry questions. But we all remember Baba Black Sheep or Jack and Jill, or as the Gujaratis probably do, Chaki Ben, Mari Sate Ramba, Autto Ke Nahi. They remember all these things which they learned ages back. Why is it that you still remember what you learned many, many years back, but don't remember what you probably learned 15, 20, 25 years back, more recent? I guess it's about learning joyfully. So if you're learning joyfully, the lessons remain etched to your mind, and you even use those lessons to your advantage. So one is learn joyfully. The second is probably enjoy the journey. I still say, Venkatesh, I tell this to all people, those who attend my sales programs or those with whom I talk on building careers, building fulfilling careers. I tell them, I don't remember making a sale. Yeah, when I do sales training programs, I try and relate those incidents. But honestly, I don't remember making too many sales. I remember making friends. People call them customers. And those friends were tremendously happy to talk to me and to deal with me. So, which means what? If you're enjoying the journey, you're happy. If you're happy, you're broadly smiling. And if you're smiling, probably you convey that your customer is your mirror. The people you interact with are mirrors. If you're smiling, the mirror smiles back at you. If you frown, they're going to frown back at you. And if you look at them in disgust or anger or repulsively, I guess that's going to reflect back. So maybe one of the most important things that I learned along the way was enjoy the journey. And so I was so busy riding those 250,000 kilometers on my bullet that I probably forgot that there were things like sales targets, pressures to perform, boss yelling at you, company asking you to make sure you're on target well in time. And I did surprise myself on various occasions by not only achieving but exceeding my targets. Or even in later assignments when I was leading teams of sales and marketing people. sometimes targets would appear to be almost insignificantly small. Maybe because one of the things that I was urging my colleagues to do was to enjoy what they do. So if I were to put it in a single sentence, I would say, learn joyfully and enjoy the journey. I guess that's how it all started. And thankfully it continued. Doesn't mean that there weren't thorns on the way. There were many, many in fact. But I guess if you have a slightly positive attitude, you tend to be able to handle them. Take it on the chin, actually. Fortunately, many years of exposure to cricket taught me one more thing, that quite a few deliveries are going to hit you on the chin. And then it is entirely up to you to go retire hurt or be willing to face yet another delivery. Today's generation have a far better example of a youngster who was making his early appearance in Pakistan, on Pakistan soil, and getting hit by a fiery bouncer. But then that squeaky voice said, "Main khelega." And so I guess youngsters today have a far better example and a far better role model. But I guess in our days, we used to look at ourselves and say, all right, let's carry on manfully. So this set of, sums up the beginning of my career.
बाइक एक्चुअली propelled you to think मिले जब तुम तो लगा यूं कि कायनात की सारी खुशियां मुझे मिल गई.
True, because you see, a lot of people tend to think that they make things happen. I think slightly differently. I think there is somebody sitting upstairs who makes things happen. That bike was to happen, it happened. And since it happened, and since it also, the second signal is when you get a bike with a registration number which coincides with the date of your reporting at your branch office, there are signals. And if you're able to catch those signals, you know that something significant is happening. So a lot of people think I rode the bike. Not really. I think, like you said, the bike took me places. And it is probably because of the bike that sometimes I got into trouble. It is probably because of the bike that I went and explored unexplored territories. Don't forget, I was a student of history, and I look at the academic aspect. I'm a postgraduate in medieval Indian history with specialization in Mughal art and architecture. And so when I explored Rajasthan in great detail on my bike, where I went to a lot of other states, neighboring states, I've grown up on the Sultanate and Mughal era and things like that in academics. And I got to explore a lot of things. Then that's when I discovered that this bike was destined to take me to all those places. It's not about, life giving you what you want. It's about life bestowing upon you what you need. And I guess whenever I needed something, it happened. The bike happened at the right time. The job happened at the right time. Customers happened at the right time. You're absolutely right. The bike propelled me to probably ensure that. And then, like you said, the bike and the universe conspired to make things happen. So, which brings me to the next, important point, and that is when life bestows gifts upon you, have that attitude of gratitude. Be thankful. To a lot of people, and let's not forget, Venkatesh, today's times are slightly different. But in the late 70s and early 80s, jobs were not available in plenty. And for someone who's not very clear as to what he wants to do in life, you remember in our good old days, parents used to tell us, study hard. My mother used to tell me, study hard. पढ़ाई करो बेटा, पढ़ाई करो. नहीं तो या तो फौजी बनोगे या salesman बनोगे. Now, how many people know that I fulfilled my mother's desires on both counts? Almost paid it to the Indian military academy and got a salesperson's job. Now, that is known as the last refuge. It's like deep third man is the last refuge for any lousy fielder, the last refuge of any youngster to realize later over a period of time in life that sales is what makes the world spin and sales is what makes the world move. And you can't do a damn thing in life if you can't sell. I may be saying it a little too cruelly, but at one point of time when I was writing a book on sales, I was tempted to give it the title learn to sell or prepare for hell. But then wiser counsel prevailed. And so we ended up calling it something else before the book was released. But what I'm trying to say is that it was good. Great things happened. That I was pushed into a career by default, not by design, that taught me one thing, that if a human being wants anything in life, it is a salesperson who makes it happen.
Yes, I completely agree with you because even I got by default into sales after doing my graduation in science, chemistry. The only line which was visible was a medical representative job. And when I got into a medical representative job, we actually were very, very happy because we were able to meet new people, we were able to get new customers, we were able to talk and learn a lot of things. So whatever I am today in this span of 30 years, is because of that discipline and because of that punctuality, because of the learning in that pharma industry, which I always can give a credit. That actually pushed me to what I am today. And a person should always, that is what I always have thought, should be more inclined towards sales to start with. Today also, when somebody talks to me saying that I want to be an entrepreneur, I always say, you first have a sales experience. When you become a salesperson, you will get to learn no. And when the more you get to learn no, the more you learn.
Absolutely. Very true. And the learning continues, because what happens is you graduate from selling smaller or more insignificant products to products that probably change the way organizations work, change the way products are manufactured, change the way the country is run. And so, what really happens at one point of time is you're dealing with bigger customers, you're dealing with a larger volume of business, you're dealing with multiple levels of buyers, you're dealing with people with different and differing needs when they are finalizing deals. And then there comes a stage in your life when you're no longer selling, but you're teaching people how to sell, you're showing them the ropes, you're leading teams of sales and marketing people to achieve far, far bigger goals. And that's when you realize that you're being good at something isn't enough. You got to be good at a lot of other things as well. One of the greatest temptations that probably would have happened be to demonstrate to the youngsters in the company as to how great a salesperson I am, and so not allowing them to actually demonstrate their potential or their talents. Number one. And of course, that little fear is there that you might just lose the business if the youngster goes out of control, or if the call, kind of evades his careful focus. But then, with time and with a certain amount of hurtful lessons, you learn, and you slowly learn to give in and to give an opportunity to your colleagues, until one day you feel that you should let them do the whole thing. You have walked and talked a lot, now let them do it. And so be there like a guiding spirit, be there in the background and tell the guy, I'm there, don't worry, go ahead, do your best. If you're running into hot water, you know the signal. So you have, invisible signals. You may be pressing your shoe with his shoe, he may be looking in your direction, he may give you a subtle hint, and then you step in so that he doesn't, drown in that hot water. And then over a period of time, you see, as you move up the leadership roles, from doing to showing, and then ultimately to sharing a vision, articulating that vision, and ensuring that teams of people run their teams of people to make things happen. And honestly, Venkatesh, that is when probably I guess I realized that, yeah, it's time now to be a coach and show people the way, and show, and so I guess one day it occurred to me that why hundreds of people? Why not thousands? Why not hundreds of thousands? And so I don't know. I am not keeping exact track. But if I were to sit down and calculate, I guess about 13 odd thousand youngsters must have interacted with me on some platform or the other, where I would have been telling them either how to sell, or how to build a personality, how to work in the corporate world, and how to be fulfilled. I don't want to use the word successful. And I guess that is where I probably get a bigger kick today when I find youngsters at a railway station or an airport, or I'm waiting for a cab outside a restaurant. My wife is standing next to me, and a youngster or a middle-aged person comes and says, "Do you remember me? I was at this B school, and you taught us. You took one session on sales, just one session, about an hour and a half." And that was the day I decided that I would make a career in sales. And this is what I am. And he takes out his visiting card and shares it very proudly with you. Uh, I do not make a public display of it, Venkatesh, but I think my collar does go up. And I feel tremendously happy for that person and satisfied that I've been able to touch somebody's life and that he will pay forward, he'll pay it forward, and he'll do it for somebody else. So then we are all blessed from the kind of school that we come from. Great coaches, all seniors in the various organizations that I worked in were great teachers, great coaches, people who demonstrated great talent, great ability, great skill, great attitude, and then inculcated all those qualities in you. They worked very hard at making you what you were to become. And so when you look back, and that is what I reiterate, the attitude of gratitude, because but for these three, four, five, six people who would have pushed you around, kicked you around, ridiculed you maybe at times, but then be the first people to pat you on your back when you have accomplished something. There are bosses who ask me to take a day off officially when it is not supposed to be done. There are bosses who have taken me for a movie in the second half of a working day on an outstation trip because we bagged some phenomenal orders in the morning, which I had prepared very well. So there are bosses who would have gone out of the way to ensure that you're comfortable even beyond your measly travel budgets, so that you can eat the same kind of food like them, stay as healthy as they are, and develop very, very good habits, reading habits. I still remember one boss telling me, Mr. Rangaswamy, the books that have been bought and the newspapers that have been bought that are behind your head, behind the seat, are not meant for you to recline your head and neck on. They are meant to be read so that you remain an intelligent salesperson who knows what's happening in the world. Now, when someone tells you this in the early 80s, you're thankful because when you meet customers of various shapes and sizes, you never know who could be a golf enthusiast, who could be a karate expert, or who could have a tremendous interest in saxophone. And this knowledge and this experience comes handy because one of the things I've noticed, Venkatesh, is there are a lot of people in the corporate world who I would call single dimension. They may be very good at what they do, but take them out of that little comfort zone and they are like fish out of water. So as you grow, as you mature, as you grow as a salesperson, drift into marketing, and then over a period of time, help in running the organization like a member of the top management think tank. There is a lot of information, there is a lot of knowledge that you've acquired over a period of time that comes handy. And so the other important lesson is your education begins the day you step out of college. And that education, I guess, is far more valuable and very difficult to put a fee on or a price on. Today, people pay certain lakhs of rupees to get into a B school. I don't think any kind of money would suffice to pay for the lessons we would have learned after stepping into our work zones from day one. So this is another learning from life that I like to share with people. You have undergone a lot of shifts from types of businesses to towns in India, from Bombay to Ahmedabad to Bangalore, from working for publications, working for pharmaceutical companies, and then getting into the finance sector and things like that. I'm sure you would have had the same kind of feeling that the knowledge, the experience that you garner after you dirty your fingers or bloody your nose probably comes more handy, isn't it?
Agreed, sir. The more I get into the field, the more I dirty my hands and feet, the more I learn. An AC cabin, what I learned is an AC cabin doesn't teach you. Sitting in the office, strategizing doesn't help you. You will have to go out to learn and unlearn and obviously relearn. So until and unless
Yes,
that doesn't happen, I will not be able to learn. So sales is such a beauty which you go through all this cycle again.
yes, absolute. Very true. You keep learning, you keep unlearning, you keep relearning, and then you realize that people talk about a world that is changing. No, that is cliched. The world was always changing. People talk of VUCA world. I feel that the world was volatile even 40 years back. The world was uncertain. The world was complex. The world was ambiguous. It's just that probably we found certain terminologies, but you kept evolving. If you were adapting well enough, if you're the word probably is agile rather than alert. And I guess it has to do with the fact that you have an open mind. Uh, as long as you have an open mind, you can pick up anything. Look at the last 12 to 15 months in particular. I don't know about you, but people like me who had only 3 or 4 video conferences prior to 2020, I never used the electronic medium to teach. From that perspective, yeah, there are series of mine. I am on YouTube. All that is fine. But otherwise, live sessions of this kind. But I guess within 4 to 6 days of the lockdown being announced, Venkatesh, on the advice and the urging of a student of mine, I got into online training. And so we all adapt. We all pick up these important milestones and also important methods by which we can learn and teach. Because as they say, if you want to learn, the best way to learn is to teach. Because if I had to take a session for youngsters at a B school, I must not only know what I'm talking about, I must also know very clearly as to what is it that they want to hear. So I need to know them far better, so bringing me to that golden part that if you know your product very well, even if you know it 95%, you may just get away with it. But you must know your customer 150% well. And you do not sell what goes into the product, you sell what the customer gets out of the product. And all right, everybody talks about benefit selling and things like that. But today it's about the customer having so much of knowledge. Internet, Wikipedia, YouTube, Google have resulted in an information overload and a knowledge overkill. At the same time, Google and Wikipedia have been created by human beings like you and me. There isn't a guarantee of authenticity. So what is said on one page could be very different from what is said on the other page. So the role of the salesperson, this why I was bringing in this point was, one oft asked question is, what's going to happen to the role of the salesperson with online selling, with the internet, with all the information available so easily at the click of the button? My answer is just one simple sentence. The salesperson is there to bring in clarity and sanity in the customer's life. Because there's so much of information that it becomes difficult for the customer to really focus on what's really happening and what should he go in for. At the end of the day, Venkatesh, the customer is not in the business of buying your product. The customer is in the business of running his business. And when you come in and offer to that business versatility or operability or reliability or serviceability or applicability or productivity and not just a lot of fees, you are probably making huge sense. So in fact, this is the era, this is the time when there should be the rebirth of the sales. A new avatar. The salesperson who comes in genuinely like a friend, a philosopher, guide, than someone who says, let me get you out of this chaos. I'll take care. And the word which probably was never associated with sales until, say, about half a dozen years back is probably going to be ringing, resonate. And that word is empathy.